Alright, hello everyone, and thank you for tuning in once again to the Black Box Podcast. BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. Today we're going back to 2014, and we're going to look at a very particular case coming to us from Economy, Pennsylvania, in Beaver County. Now, I mentioned at the beginning I'm from West Virginia. I've driven through Beaver County a couple times, when we're going to Pittsburgh or even on the way to Ohio, actually. I'm not super familiar with the area, but that place name caught my attention about this case, so that was one of the first things that pulled me in. But I would have to say that this is one that I first found out about from Wikipedia, of all places. And I mentioned a handful of cases have introduced me into true crime cases and events from Wikipedia. It was in one of the related article things, and I think it was actually just the kind of list of unidentified persons, because what we had was a boy named Charles got off the school bus in December of 2014, and he's walking through somewhat of a wooded area, and it's about 30 feet from the bus stop into the woods, and he comes across a severed human head. And on Wikipedia, they introduced it by saying that it was a severed human head that had been embalmed, and the eyeballs had been removed, and red balls had been put in place of the eyes. And I was just like, oh my gosh! I mean, I just knew that this would definitely turn into something that I would just kind of get overwhelmed with. But it's like what I learned actually was that this guy Charles, who found the severed head, he called the authorities about it, but the eyelids were actually closed, and that the red balls had been just kind of placed in there with the eyelids closed, so it's not as horrific as it seems. But what I would say is that this is one that's still gone unsolved. No one has been able to identify the woman. That's sorry, it's a female human head that they found. No one has been able to identify the woman who this head has belonged to, and overwhelmingly, the kind of consensus is they believe that this is something that has been tied to the kind of black market associated with human body parts and trading. Like, some people donate their bodies to medical science, and then there's kind of like a black market where people are very legally selling human body parts for a handful of reasons. And I would have to say, though, that the biggest reason that is pushing people toward that is when they conducted an examination of the woman's kind of head. That's all that is left of her. That all that they were able to recover. They really believe that everything was very, very meticulously cut. They don't believe it was done by an amateur. It was kind of done with someone who had surgical knowledge. In other words. However, though, I do have to insist, we have people like Stephen Marshall, the jigsaw killer from the United Kingdom, who was just some guy working in a bar who was able to kind of dissect a body with surgical level skill, and he completely baffled everybody. I mean, there are events like that where some people do learn how to do this. In that particular case, Stephen Marshall, he learned how to do it by cutting up corpses to dispose of them. Like when he was working for a nightclub, he was like the enforcer for somebody, and they murdered a few people, and Stephen Marshall cut up the bodies, and he learned how to kind of sever the limbs through the cartilage and stuff as opposed to sawing the bone. But I mean, that's a very, very rare incident. Not to mention that they had the red balls that were placed where the eyeballs should be. And the only clue about those is that they said China written on them, but of course that was probably most likely meant to say that they were made in China. But the thing about that is a very unusual practice. No one was familiar with it. No one could say that's not done in funeral homes. That is not done in hospitals to place red balls after eyeballs have been removed. So it's something very confusing. I mean, it's a very horrific thing that's going on, and the biggest question that everybody has is just like, not only who was this woman, but why only the head was found in the forest. I mean, and it's not really, a superly dense wooded area. Once again, we're 30 feet from the road, but it's like, why on earth was this human head found, but none of the other body parts? Very perplexing. But one of the issues with this is it's going to be really difficult to try and compose a narrative. I would say that Reuters did a very kind of impressive article about that. They covered a lot of kind of useful information. Very detailed article from Reuters, and I was actually using a few other websites that I had never really tried before, such as Medium.com, where I'm here now. And Medium.com is something I've seen in search results, but I never clicked on it. However, it just seems like they also have an interesting presentation. I found out about this case a couple of days ago, as I mentioned, from Wikipedia, but they wrote kind of an update on August 2nd, 2019, and it is now August 10th, 2019, so it's a good opportunity to talk about one of the most recent cases with this woman. Once again, they just found the severed head in the forest, eyeballs removed, two red, like little bouncy balls, if you will, have been placed in the eye sockets, and that's all we really know. But they do provide some more information here. Medium.com. According to an isotope test, the woman spent the last 7 months of her life in several areas: Ohio, southwestern Pennsylvania, northern West Virginia, western Maryland, central and northeastern Pennsylvania, and eastern New York. And she most likely grew up in western Pennsylvania. It's like the isotope testing, of course, is kind of like analyzing things about her, and they can kind of tell the places that she's been. There are a variety of ways that they can do that. Another similar type is the palynology testing, which they used with the death of Marcia King, who was formerly known as the Buckskin Girl. But she was identified, and that should give us hope. It's like when they are investigating cases like this, some of these scientific technological breakthroughs are very useful. And this isn't really a breakthrough. I mean, they're just kind of examining the kind of material that is in, on, and around her. And the biggest reason though why she's going to all these places is they believe that, based on the kind of traces of lidocaine and atropine that they had in kind of, just that they were able to recover, they believe that she had some cardiac issues, and that she most likely was someone who was elderly, who was kind of probably dealing with a lot of pain, who had been moving to a lot of different places for treatment or care or something like that. The woman had also had a lot of work done to her teeth, and she had a filling compound that had only been available since 2004. But one of the things that surprised me with this exact case is this Beaver County Jane Doe. Once again, they only found the head. I mean, that's just like a severed head found in the forest. Is that they really are nowhere near able to determine her age. We're talking about the age range of 50 to 80 years old. That's the age range. I mean, she could have been 51, she could have been 79. That is a pretty big way to kind of like examine, and really to try and learn a little bit more about her, well, just her life. I mean, if she's 51 versus 79 years old, that's a very big age range. But one of the things that this Medium article also states is that the body was embalmed, and like they found this, embalmed head, and the embalming fluid compromised the DNA, so they weren't really able to get a very good extraction of the DNA. But one of the things they did do was they kind of reconstructed a bust of what they believed the woman looked like when she was alive. Once again, age 50 to 80 years old. And that image has been out there, but no one has come forward and said that this was their family member. One of the things that they also did to investigate this was they were like contacting funeral homes, like has anything happened to any of the kind of bodies in the funeral parlors and such, and no one had any sort of connection to that. I mean, is it possible that she was murdered for the type of illegal body parts trade, which is called a body broker, as gruesome as it sounds? It's very possible, and you really just have to wonder, it's like, what on earth is the head doing 30 feet from the road in the wooded area? Was it thrown from a vehicle? I mean, like, were they trying to unload something? Did they stop and fix a flat tire? And, I mean, did something fall out? I mean, by something, I mean like a crate or something like that, and I would really hate to think about something like that, but you're walking through the woods, and you find a severed head with red bouncy balls where the eyes should be. I mean, that's a very bizarre incident, and they did give her a burial though, and she's just listed as Beaver County Jane Doe. She was given a private burial service, and the headstone reads Jane Doe found December 12th, 2014. All I will say about this continuing on now is that there are a lot of horrific things in the world, and this seems like it's one of them. Whatever people are doing, it's probably something that is somewhat nasty. They're probably dealing with some sort of illegal body parts trade, And they're also probably potentially committing other crimes along the way. And there are a lot of nasty things in the world. But the thing that we have to remember is that we as human beings seek out the truth. And even though this is a very disturbing case, I'm kind of glad that I learned about it. And I don't mean glad in any joyful sense, I mean glad in the sense that you just kind of gain a little bit more understanding about human life. Because, I was watching a video the other day that someone was posting. It was just talking about, like, poverty and political problems in the Middle East. And they were showing the scene after one of the bombings, like, an airstrike bombing nonetheless, and a man is holding another person and the body's been destroyed, and you can only see the head and the spine, and one of the arms is left, and he's just holding the remnants of a human body, and he's just freaking out. And it's an absolutely horrific thing to watch. But once again, I was just like, it just kind of gives you that insight into the reality that we are dealing with. The same way that we have this Beaver County Jane Doe who was decapitated, we have this kind of just ability to seek out a higher level of understanding with the world and know that there are some dark things in life. There are some destructive things in life. There are some very just evil and chaotic things in life. But we as human beings need to be aware of that. And as we kind of try to not only seek the truth, we want to get the identity of the Beaver County Jane Doe, but we also are just going to have to learn about how do these things happen to begin with. And one of the ways is with just education and understanding.